So SeaDoo just dropped the 2026 lineup, which means that I am finally allowed to talk about them. I wasn't allowed to say anything at the time because it was all kept super top secret, but at the start of this year, they flew me out to Florida to film all of the promotional content for the 2026 models. And getting to see all of the new units and ride them before anybody else was super exciting, but it's been a very long summer waiting for them to be released to the public. But we're finally here. So let's talk about what's new this year, and I will give you my insider info and experience with the 2026 models. Let's start off with what I think was the biggest surprise for this year, especially for me. And I'm talking about the new 300 horsepower option on the Switch Pontoon. And if you've ever driven a Switch, you'll know they're not exactly the fastest thing on the water, which in my opinion is totally fine because when I'm on the Switch, I'm cruising upriver to the sandbar, I'm stopping off in little coves along the way, enjoying the music, and just hanging out with friends. I don't need a 60-mile-an-hour pontoon. That being said, when the boat's fully loaded, even with the supercharged 230 horsepower motor, there have been times where it takes a while to get on plane, and especially if you've not got your weight distribution dialed in, like there's too many people sat in the back for example, you are fighting physics to get that nose to come down. So having an extra 70 horsepower is going to make the world of difference for getting out of the hole and planing out much quicker when it's fully loaded. I actually got to drive the 300 while I was in Florida, and there is a noticeable difference in performance between that and my 230. The acceleration is just way snappier, especially in sport mode, and as for top speed, the unit I was driving was brand new, so the ECU was limiting the performance during that engine break-in period, but talking with the engineers, they reckon that it's going to have a few more miles per hour on the top end once it's fully opened up. Fuel consumption is definitely going to be something that's going to suffer with that extra horsepower and the drag from the Polytech hull. However, the engineers at SeaDoo did give the 300s a bigger fuel tank, so it's up from 29 gallons to 46 gallons, which is definitely going to help with the range anxiety. Honestly though, I'll take the trade-off between the fuel efficiency and added power because I can always carry a couple of extra fuel caddies if I'm going to go anywhere where there's no access to a fuel dock, and that extra horsepower is also going to come in super handy for towing tubes or wakeboarding, which I haven't tried with my Switch yet, but I really do have to give it a go. You can get the 300 motor in the Switch Sport, the Switch Fish, and the Switch Cruise, but only in the 21-foot lengths, unless you get the 18-foot Switch Limited, which does come with the 300 horsepower engine. The Switch Cruise Limited also gets the new double bimini option, which is awesome. I got to play with it in Florida, and it is so much easier to put up and down than the model that I have. The gas springs just make it an easy one-person job, so if you're towing the boat far or fast enough that you need to put the bimini down, it is super simple just to put it back up once you get to the launch ramp all by yourself. The other cool thing about the bimini top is that it has two sunroof panels that you can unzip, so you can still get some sun if you want. Now, my 2024 has the single bimini over the back section, and there's definitely times where it's nice to be able to go up front in the sun. So having the option to unzip the roof when you want to get a tan and then close it back up when you don't is such a huge upgrade. The JL Audio sound system is also wild. We cranked it up a few times on the shoot and I was so impressed. Like I said, the 300 I drove was brand spanking new, so the speakers likely weren't even broken in properly. And yes, that is a thing. If you didn't know, when you get new speakers, the cones and the glue that holds them together is super stiff, and so over time when you play music they loosen up and that gives you better sound quality. So I can only imagine how good that's going to sound with a few more hours on them. The new rear corner doors are a nice touch. You can get on and off the boat easier without having to climb over the back seats like I do in mine, and then they've also added a ton of new accessories like a barbecue table so you can have a little cook up on board, and they've even come out with a pop-up changing room / emergency toilet, so if somebody on the boat can't hold it, you've got them covered. So yeah, really excited about the new Switch Limited 300 model, and I get asked all the time if I like my Switch. And what I always tell people is that it is a great way to get into boating, because if you can ride a PWC, you can drive a Switch. They're so easy to load and unload by yourself. Docking super simple, and the maintenance is the same as a PWC because it's literally just a big PWC. And everyone that's been on mine that either owns a boat or is familiar with boats is always so impressed with how versatile and user-friendly they are, which is why I say they're such a great first boat or a family boat. But let's get into the PWC lineup for 2026. And this year's main news is the addition of that 10.25-inch touchscreen display that we saw introduced last year on the GTX Limited, and it's now coming out on the RXT-X, Fish Pro Trophy, Wake Pro, and Explorer Pro as standard, and then you can also spec it on the RX-PX too. And this is all part of SeaDoo's push for more owners to use the BRP Go app, which now includes the ability for riders to track their friends while they're out in the water, as well as new detailed map features. And this last week, they did a really cool activation called Find the Sea Stash, which I was actually involved with, and link coolers were hidden across the US containing various prizes. But the biggest prize was a 2026 RX-PX, and they announced the locations on the BRP Go app, so on the morning of the drop, you could search Sea Stash, and it would show you where it was hidden, so you could then go ride and find it. And it's definitely cool to see more tech integration in the SeaDoo lineup, and it's something that I'm looking forward to trying out, especially on group rides to keep an eye where everybody is, and then even just for when I'm out on the lake, being able to look and see if any of my friends are out riding and where they're hanging out. Going through the lineup, the star of the show at Club BRP, where all the new models get announced, was probably the RX-PX in the new Gulfstream Blue, which looks great in pictures and videos, but just wait till you see it in person in direct sunlight. It's insane. I'm not even a blue type of person, but when I was watching Curtis rip that thing around during filming, it looked epic. The 2026 RX-PX I got to ride in Florida also had the upgraded speakers, which are way better than the ones on my 2025 RX-PX. So if you love to blast your music when you're riding, I highly recommend that new upgrade on whichever ski you get. The RXT-X also comes in that Gulfstream Blue and look just as epic. So whether you're a solo rider or you need to carry a passenger, you can still get the 325 horsepower performance with the looks and the sound system. I think that colorway is going to be so popular for 2026. And while that blue is gorgeous, I was actually pretty excited to see the new neon yellow and gray combo for the RX-PX. I like how my current RX-PX looks, but I've always been a bit meh about the shade of gray on the 2025 models. It's got like a blue hue to it, which kind of softens the look a bit for my liking, and the new one looks like it's going to be a much more silver gray, which is going to make it more tough, especially with the carbon nose cone they come with. My favorite SeaDoo, the Explorer Pro, kind of got a little bit left out this year. Other than the big touchscreen, it didn't really get any new features, and actually now the Garmin GPS is an additional add-on rather than coming stock, as is the depth finder. And I'm assuming what made that decision happen is that because you can now get maps via the BRP Go app with a nice big touchscreen display, and the engineers are probably just thinking people will use that for their navigation rather than the charts on the Garmin. I know I personally navigate using the Garmin, and the fish finder is super helpful for fishing, obviously, but also for navigating shallow or treacherous waters where you need to know what's going on beneath the boat. So needless to say, my new 2026 Explorer is going to be spec'd with the new 9-inch Garmin for sure. I was also kind of hoping that they'd give the Explorer the rear cleats like the GTX Limited for the added functionality of tying down gear or just extra ways to dock or tie off to other skis. But unfortunately, they didn't have them either. But that being said, I do know a number of people who have done it themselves, and they just order the part from BRP and fit them directly. And that's the beauty with the current SeaDoo lineup, is that you really can mix and match a lot of parts from different models. You just have to know what bits to order, and you can kind of make your own version as long as you're handy enough. Now, moving on to the new Fish Pro, that does get the 9-inch Garmin as standard, plus the steering damper, which I believe was only seen on the Fish Pro Apex last year. That's the crazy 300 horsepower Explorer Fish Pro hybrid they came out with that was only made for 2025. Most of the models kept the same color schemes as last year, which is honestly a smart move by SeaDoo because it means that dealers can more easily shift older stock that's visually the same or similar to the new stuff, and because your warranty only kicks in when you actually purchase the unit, as a buyer, you can end up with some great deals on old stock that still look current. So there we have it. That's a look at the 2026 SeaDoo lineup. What do you guys make of it? Let me know in the comments below if you are planning to upgrade your ski this year, and let me know which is the favorite unit that they came out with. Thank you for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, be good people, make good choices, and until next time, don't do anything I wouldn't do. See ya.